briefly, as you may recall, this case pertains to allegations of medical malpractice that resulted in severe and permanent birth injuries to.
I think he disappeared.
It looks like they disconnected, Your Honor. At least that's what it looks like on my end.
Yeah, sometimes when I think people push the wrong button when they see the YouTube thing come up. So, Mr. Pitter, do you want to take over, or do you want to?
I'll text them and make sure they're getting back on. I don't want to get thrown in that. Hold on just a second.
They're coming back on. Technology can be tricky.
Dude, tell them I finished it. Tell them I finished the argument for them.
Tell them we're finished altogether.
Yeah, well, that was a good hearing, guys. We'll go ahead and make our ruling.
Approved or denied?
Let's do it again.
I think you clicked on the wrong button, Mr. Miles.
I think I did, Judge. I don't even know which button I clicked on, but I'm known not to be tech savvy. I'll be the first one to admit that. I apologize. I'm not going to touch the mouse until I'm through arguing. But so we represent baby Emma, who's severely neurologically impaired and a quadriplegic child as a result of an untimely birth. And one of the issues, Your Honor, we've been trying to obtain in discovery since July of 2021 is the information about the standard operating procedures or policies and procedures of Christus Trinity Mother Frances Hospital in Tyler. We have sent them multiple requests for production. We had lots of objections. And
so I've read all of this. There was one main question I have, and it wasn't 100% clear to me based on the briefing, is that I think Ms. King's position is that there's another person who may be an intermediary, a different nurse between the person you've already taken and then the actual CNO, Chief Nursing Officer. Is that correct, Ms. King?
It is, Your Honor. I've offered them two different things. Tracy Cook, who they decided not to depose, and she was the Joint Commission person, and that's the standards that they're talking about. They chose not to take her, in fact, last April. And then I've also suggested that they send me some topics for a corporate representative deposition if they still feel like that they need additional information. And I did that in August, and instead they filed the motion to compel the deposition of the CNO.
So I guess my question is, why not do these other depositions first? And then if you still don't have the information you need, then we look at the CNO.
well, the reason, Your Honor, is twofold. One, the CNO is the person who, under the express language of the Joint Commission standards, must draft and implement policies and procedures. And as you may recall at the last hearing, that was the same inquiry the court had, which I of course understand the purpose of that inquiry. And you asked opposing counsel, is there somebody at the hospital who would have this same information? And they said, yes, Your Honor. And you said, is there someone at the hospital other than Miss Welch that can provide that information? And they responded to you and said, yes, Your Honor, Suzanne Gailey, who is a director and became the administrative director. That's the only person they identified. You denied our motion, subject to our right to return if we didn't get the information we needed, so that we could depose Nurse Gailey, who they represented to you, had the same information. Then we spent 2 or 3 hours on Nurse Gailey's deposition, and she basically had no information. She never drafted any of the policies, she testified. She doesn't know who drafted them. She had no responsibility for implementing them. She wasn't familiar with the Joint Commission standards that pertain to the implementation of these policies and procedures. She didn't know who had the responsibility to implement the labor and delivery policies. She didn't know if the policies utilized at one hospital were system-wide or standardized. And it goes on and on and on. They know that's the information we've been seeking for over a year. We've been saying we want to know who has the responsibility to draft labor and delivery policies and procedures and to implement them. They knew that was the issue. They identified one other person to this court in April of 22, and that was Nurse Gailey, and she didn't have a clue about any of this information we were seeking to depose.
Ms. King, it sounds like we've been through this already.
And Your Honor, so the issue is twofold. Number one, the way that discovery to a corporation is supposed to be conducted, and it has been conducted, is that they send me topics and I say, here are the people that have the best information about those topics. And then those people might have to talk to other people within the organization. They might have to look at documents from the time. But this is the first time hearing that they want information on who actually drafts the labor and delivery policies. Now, Suzanne Gailey had information on education and training of the nurses regarding the policies. And they asked her all about those policies. They asked her about the actual policies that had been produced. And they asked her about implementation. In other words, how are these interpreted? How are the nurses trained? How are they educated? That was her piece. If they want to talk about the Joint Commission piece, the person that we identified was Tracy Cook. And we have email correspondence where they decided that they did not want to take her deposition. The CNO is not responsible under the Joint Commission for drafting the policies. What she's responsible for is coordinating those efforts, meaning delegating. That's what every single corporate representative, high-level ranking CEO or CNO is responsible for. They are high level, and then that is delegated to those who are behind them. So not one person has all of the information that they're looking for. And nobody at this hospital is going to have information about what happens at other system hospitals. And quite frankly, I'd object to producing anybody about policies and procedures from hospitals that are not involved in this case. And so to me, it is completely irrelevant for people to know, is this policy in effect in other system hospitals? Of course, Suzanne Gailey didn't know that information. They weren't asking her because they wanted to know from her that information. They wanted to be able to come back to this court and ask for the CNO's deposition. But it is completely irrelevant whether the policies at this hospital, the one involved in this case, are the same as or different than other system hospitals in other towns with different resources, different nurses, different patient populations, and all of the different things that go into making hospitals. And so if they want a person to talk to them about the system, well, Christus Health was dismissed by them in this case. They are no longer a party. And so nobody at this hospital is going to have information about the labor and delivery policies at other hospitals in the system. So Suzanne Gailey didn't have it and nobody else will. If they want to know about Joint Commission standards, we identified Tracy Cook in December of last year. We identified her in February of this year, and they chose to pass on her deposition. And so to go back and say, well, we still don't have this information about Joint Commission, that's because they've chosen not to get that information. You want to know who drafts the policies and procedures that we've produced in this case? Send me an interrogatory and I'll answer it. I'll tell you how those policies are drafted. They're drafted by committee. It's a process. It's not a single person. If you want to know information that the corporation has, do what I've asked, which is send me a request for a corporate representative deposition, send me topics, and then I'll be able to educate and get those people there. It does us no good, and it's getting us nowhere for them to individually want to take depositions of individuals in their individual capacity and ask them about things that happened 4 and 5 years ago. They're not going to remember, but they want to surprise them. They don't want them prepared to answer questions in the deposition. So they won't send me a corporate rep request. Before they filed this latest motion, I again said, are you talking about a corporate rep type deposition? If so, send me some topics so that we can discuss it. They have not done what they need to do to engage in less intrusive discovery before we get to the chief nursing officer of this particular hospital. And I would say if they want to do that, if we want to continue to fight, then take the depositions of the people that I've continuously tried to produce and they've decided not to. So I don't know what else to
So
do
let me
on
ask,
this particular effort.
let me ask this, because I want to make sure I understand the procedural history here. So the hospital chain or company, I guess, was originally a defendant in this case, and that defendant, and that was, and the person they're trying to take today is the CNO of the chain or of this particular hospital?
Okay, so she is the so she is an employee of Christus Health, the defendant who was dismissed.
Okay.
She has several different hats. One of them is CNO of this hospital, but she's also the chief nurse executive for the system. And so that's above our hospital. They are also not a defendant.
So
She's
she's the CNO of this particular, is she the CNO of multiple different hospitals or just this one?
So as the chief nursing executive, she acts as a CNO of multiple hospital systems. And Lisa, who represents Christus Health before they were dismissed, might have more information if I'm misspeaking on the way that the entities are interrelated. So Lisa, if I'm misstating, please tell me and correct me.
Let me just clarify a little bit, Your Honor. The CNO, Shelley Welch, is the CNO for this hospital. Everything she does is for and on behalf of this hospital. All of her duties and obligations and loyalties are owed to this hospital. Yes, she gets a W-2 from Christus Health, but for all intents and purposes, she is a borrowed servant, and all of her benefits are with this hospital. Her reporting is to the CEO of this hospital, so that her information would be limited to this particular hospital. Yes, she has another title and other duties, which is more of a consultative type role, but she is the CNO for this hospital.
And if, Your Honor, if I may shed some light on some of those arguments, please, sir. It's, contrary to what Ms. King is arguing to this court, the facts are very different procedurally. We didn't know who Shelley Welch was. We didn't know who Suzanne Gailey was. Those names were given to us by opposing counsel when we did inquire who has the most knowledge of the policies and procedures that were in effect at this facility and other facilities. Those names were given to us by defense counsel, not Ms. King. It was the defense counsel before her, Mr. Oleski. That's how we had their names. But this Shelley Welch, she is the CNO, as now was explained by Ms. Alvarado, of this facility, in contrary to Ms. King's argument that, oh no, none of these CNOs draft policies or have any responsibility for that. That's exactly the Joint Commission standard, which is Exhibit B to our depot. It says the nurse executive coordinates the development of hospital-wide programs, policies, and procedures, and the implementation of policies and procedures. So it's development and implementation that is their responsibility by Joint Commission standards. And there's only one person that has that responsibility, and that's Nurse Welch. And when they produced Nurse Gailey, it was an absolute waste of our time on policy and procedures. She could not answer any of the questions on policies and procedures. And you asked them point blank, who has that information? And they gave you her name, and we deposed her, and it was a fruitless deposition. And to tell you the consequences, if we were allowed to depose her, opposing counsel argues in their motion to you, we would have to redepose every expert. This testimony is only relevant to one expert on each side. We have 12 experts. We have one expert that may have additional opinions. He's a hospital administrator, and he's not being deposed until December 19th. They have one expert of their 13 that this depot could be relevant to, and that depot isn't going to occur until sometime in January of 23. So it's a blatant misrepresentation to say there's 23 people that will have to be redeposed. This whole case will have to be continued. There's 2 people that could have additional opinions, and neither of them have been deposed, Your Honor.
And I'm going to direct this to Ms. Alvarado. Ms. Alvarado, then you said that this individual is the CNO of this hospital.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And so there's an intermediary, I guess, nurse that's between who's been deposed and this nurse that would have more information that, or is, what is your position on that?
Yes, Your Honor. As Ms. King indicated, Tracy Cook would have the information regarding the Joint Commission. Ms. Welch, the CNO of the hospital, she, with respect to policies and procedures, those are developed at the lowest level, Your Honor. Those are developed by the people who are close to the bedside, who actually have the expertise and knowledge, not the CNO who's at the top. And any approval and implementation would be done by the managers, directors, program coordinators for those particular units who have that expertise, not Ms. Welch. Ms. Welch does have some approval process for generic system-wide policies, but with respect to labor and delivery, which is what at issue in this case, as Ms. King indicated, you've got Ms. Tracy Cook, who can speak to the Joint Commission standards, and Ms. Gailey, who has already been deposed.
Your Honor, Nurse Gailey testified very differently. The nurse that we were required to depose before said that that she answers, and the person immediately above her is Shelley Welch. That was her sworn testimony, nobody in between the two of them.
Ms. Alvarado, how do you respond to that?
With respect to what they're wanting to discover, the labor and delivery policies, those are policies and procedures that Ms. Welch does not implement. Those are done by a committee. Those are done by the people that are closer to the specialty. Ms. Welch is not that individual. And if you look at the affidavit testimony that we've supplied, she has indicated she has no knowledge regarding the care provided to Ms. Walker in this case, or to the baby, and does not have firsthand personal knowledge regarding those policies and procedures, the creation, the implementation of those policies and procedures. Those are done by people that are closer to the specialty, to the care, to the labor and delivery unit, not Ms. Welch.
Your Honor, we have no intention, and we would stipulate, we're not going to ask Ms. Welch anything about the care to this patient. That's never been our inquiry with them of deposing her. It's their policies and procedures that were drafted and implemented that pertain to this. Back up briefly, when we first asked for their policy and procedure index so we could limit our request, they said there's no index. But then people have testified there is an index, but we don't have an index to this day. So we asked about specific policies. They objected to every single one. Then we had one policy produced. Months later, we had two more produced. Months later, 4 more. We have 7 policies and procedures that were produced, and that's it. When there's obviously a whole lot more, but we don't have an index as to what they have. We need to talk to someone that would have knowledge. Even if she didn't draft them and it's done by committee, she's required by the Joint Commission to implement them. And if she says she didn't, we're fine with that testimony. If she swears under oath, I didn't draft anything, I didn't implement anything, I know nothing about the policies and procedures, and she is the chief nursing officer, it'll be a short deposition. That's all our expert needs to know, is she didn't do her job.
What is your expert's position on what the CNO should have done?
Well, to be totally forthright with the court, he didn't address a lot of that because we didn't have the discovery, nor does their expert address it. But there's 2 positions he has. Is Joint Commission requires the certified, they call it the nurse executive. The hospital here calls it the chief nurse executive, but they're supposed to draft and implement the policies. And here's the other issue. On standardization or uniformity, no expert addresses that because we don't know yet. Are their policies different at one hospital L&D department versus another? They're telling us they are, but we don't have any evidence of that. And that's evidence we need. If a patient can go to Christus Hospital or health system in one city It's part of this same umbrella and get different care because there's better policies or more policies versus the Tyler facility. That's something we want to know, and that's very relevant to our experts. If they fail to have standardization or uniformity, and no one has yet been able to give us that information. We have sent interrogatories. We've asked that in depositions. We don't have an answer either way from anybody.
So what is y'all's position, I guess, Ms. King or Ms. Alvarado, about, why would it be, it does seem like you should have standardization across the system. Or does each hospital have entirely different policies?
Yes, Your Honor. They could, some of the policies that we've produced will have more than one hospital on them. And so it shows you that they're applicable at more than one campus, but each hospital's different. So what Trinity Mother Francis and Tyler can do is different than one of those smaller community hospitals. So yes, you depending upon where you go, you do get different care. If I go to a level 1 trauma center, obviously I'm going to get better care and different care and have different specialists in-house than if I'm at a community rural hospital. That's just the nature of hospitals. It depends on where they are, what the patient population is. And a lot of these smaller rural hospitals will go and have people care flighted to larger hospitals. People from Tyler get care flighted to Dallas. So yes, the hospitals all have different resources. They all have a different command structure. They all have different, like maybe it's a 4-bed unit versus a 15-bed unit. So they're all going to be different. And my client, the hospital, isn't going to have people that know what's going on at other hospitals because they're not in that command structure. I've never in one of my cases been asked, what are the policies at other, like when I represent other hospital systems, what are the policies in, let's say, San Antonio? What are the policies in Corpus Christi? It's irrelevant because that's not the care that they could have gotten when they came to Tyler. So we've produced all of the policies for Tyler. And I produced Suzanne Gailey, who explained all of the policies that had been produced. They asked her hypothetical after hypothetical. What would happen? How is this policy supposed to be used? How are these nurses trained? And so that's one piece of it. The second piece, and the Joint Commission standards that they attached absolutely do not say that the CNO is responsible for drafting the policies. They say she's in charge of implementation and coordinating and directing, which of course that's what every high-level executive does. The managing partner at a law firm might very well be in charge of directing and implementing the firm's policies. But if that person doesn't have a bankruptcy background, there's going to be a director of that litigation that's in charge of that particular section. Same thing happens in hospitals. Shelley Welch was not a labor and delivery nurse. She has no labor and delivery background. So she is not going to be able to testify about labor and delivery policies.
And this person that you proposed that's in between, they have a labor and delivery.
So Suzanne Gailey did, yes. And Tracy Cook has the Joint Commission. She is the person who was in charge at the time of making sure that the hospital met the Joint Commission standards that they're talking about today. And so she's the person who was in charge of the Joint Commission inspections and made sure that the information that we provided to the Joint Commission when they came out and did their accreditation inspection, that they had all of the information they needed. The truth of the matter is that because we're a Joint Commission accredited hospital, it means the Joint Commission comes out and then they deem that everything that we've done is in accordance with their standards. We were accredited during this time period, which means the Joint Commission, the person who creates the standards and investigates the standards that they're talking about, came to our hospital and said they're doing everything correctly. So that's what a Joint Commission accreditation means. So they're saying, oh no, it wasn't correct. Well, the Joint Commission disagrees with them because they accredited this hospital year after year. But Tracy Cook is the person at the hospital who has information about the Joint Commission standards. And I'll say it again, nobody at the hospital is going to have information about what's happening at other hospitals. No one is going to have that information. And they haven't asked me for that information, and I'd object and we'd, be back in front of you. because I think it's just wholly irrelevant what's happening at other hospitals and whether those policies are applicable.
What
at
about
more than
other
one
hospitals
hospital.
of the same type? Like, let's say you have two community hospitals, they have different policies, or is it?
Yes, I think so. I haven't looked at the. So I think there's two other hospitals. Lisa, you may be able to two or three other hospitals in the system, along with a bunch of clinics. And I know that Shelley Welch is the CNE over those places, but they're smaller hospitals than Tyler. Tyler's the largest hospital, I think, in that particular system. And Christus is divided into regions. So there's kind of this East Texas region, which is Mother Francis, and then they have a Corpus Christi one that's called Spawn, and then they have Santa Rosa that's around in and around San Antonio. So some of them are the larger hospitals like Tyler is, and there'll be a lot of smaller community hospitals around Tyler. But I think Tyler is the biggest one in that system. Lisa, you can correct me.
Yeah, that's correct. But Your Honor, I think what's critical and what Ms. King has already argued is Ms. Welch has delegated those duties and responsibilities regarding policies and procedures, personnel decisions, competency verification, nursing staff orientation, education, training, nursing staff operations. She has delegated all of that to Nurse Gailey and others who are close to that specialty, the experts who are in the L&D unit.
Your Honor, you asked a perfect question. Is Tracy Cook a labor and delivery nurse? And the direct answer is no. We had this roundabout answer about she has personal knowledge of labor and delivery at this hospital. The reason we don't want Tracy Cook, just so the record's clear, they represented to us as they are representing to this court. She does a joint commission accreditation. That's not what we're looking at. We're not interested in knowing where they are accredited or not and what problems did they have. And then when we talked about taking her depo, they said, well, we're not let you go into any of that. It's all peer reviewed, privileged. And they're right to an extent. Some of the information is privileged. And so we chose not to take her depo because any information we would want is privileged. So we forego it for that reason, not because she had information and was lower down the chain of Miss Welch. She doesn't have information about what we're seeking. And again, contrary to Ms. King, the Joint Commission standards uses the word development. She has responsibility for the development of hospital-wide programs, policies, and procedures, not just implementation. But this is the problem we've had for 14 months now. We're given one name, we depose her, she knows nothing. Then I was quite shocked, to be candid, when we were in court and they gave the name Gailey. We had never heard of her in our life, and answered your question point blank. She's the one that has this information. She didn't, Your Honor. She did not have the information.
So, I mean, I do think this is a very close call. When is the trial setting on this case?
May of 23, Your Honor.
I guess my thought is why don't you do a corporate rep deposition that covers exactly the topics you want to cover? It may turn out you need to take the CNO's deposition at that point. I don't mean to make you kind of jump through hoops, but I'm worried that you take the CNO's deposition and then where do you go? You haven't done any corporate rep deposition, right?
No, sir.
No, sir. We thought Gailey's the one they offered up to give us that information, though.
But you didn't you didn't depose her as a corporate rep.
No, sir. But we're not looking for a corporate rep of Christus Health. We're looking for the Christus Trinity Mother Francis Hospital Tyler that Shelley Welch is the CNO for. Gailey testified there's no one in between the two of them. And if they're giving us names now of someone in between that we've never heard of, I would like them to represent, is that somebody at Christus Trinity Mother Francis Tyler? Because we understand there's nobody between Gailey and Welch in that capacity, Your Honor.
So I do want to make it clear. So the corporate rep of that particular hospital, the Tyler Hospital, you gave it a long name. The person that you need to produce as a corporate rep needs to come from that hospital. So it may end up being the CNO. Maybe she may be the person you need to take, but I don't want to keep. I feel like you're kind of using a rifle, or maybe you should be using a shotgun. if I'm not a huge, expert on guns, but you're trying to shoot at things that maybe need more of an area and ask them all the areas that you want to cover. And it may turn out that there's only one person who can do that, and that'll be the CNO. But there's no reason for us to do the CNO. And then they say they don't have the information. You have to take somebody else. The corporate rep will make you cover everything. And maybe there'll be a couple people they have to produce to do this. All right, guys.
Yes, Your Honor.
Give me an
Your-
order on that, Ms. King. The order will say at the beginning that this was heard on October 17, 2022. Go ahead and share the order with Mr. Is it Mozzie or Moz?
Mose.
Mose, sorry, Mose.
That's all right. Well, we're related to the Y's or the Mozzies, and we're all family.
Very well done, Supreme Court Justice. But
Thank
share that with Mr. Mosey and get that to me no later than this Friday.
I will. And Your Honor, one other thing.
Hmm.
As you know, the trial setting is in May, which I think we can get all this done in time. The problem is when you're talking about 5 different attorneys, is scheduling corporate rep depositions and trying to get them in before experts. So what I would like to do is extend the expert designate or the expert discovery deadline, which currently ends in January, like mid-January, so that we can actually reschedule some of this stuff to move it around.
So let me just say this, so you got, for those of you, know Ms. King has been in my court many times, Mr. Pitter has as well, is I am pretty flexible when it comes to deadlines. I'm not the type who's going to say you can't take this deposition generally unless there's a history. Depositions, in my opinion, I used to do this kind of law. Sometimes you do it up until the, week before trial. You try not to, but we do need to get designations and all that kind of stuff. So make sure we have the playing field set, but the depositions, I typically are going to allow is up until trial. Have you been to mediation on this case yet?
No, we have a mediation date set. We're trying to set depositions all around it. So
Who's the mediator?
Joel Steed is going to mediate it, Your Honor.
I've heard good things about him. All right, guys, give me the order by Friday.
Would there be a
Right.
deadline in the order for them to produce these corporate reps?
3 weeks after giving the topics.
Thank you, Your Honor. See y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to get me an order.
Will, Your Honor.
Thank you.
See you, Judge. Have a good day.
You too. All right, is everyone here on the Bridgeview Construction versus NTEX Legacy Builders case?
It appears,
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's go on the record on DC 225934, Bridgeview Construction LLC versus NTEX Legacy Builders. Counsel, make your appearances.
My name is Craig Bernstein. I represent the defendant along with Todd Goldberg.
Ben Warden, Your Honor, on behalf of Bridgeview Construction LLC, the plaintiff and movant on the summary motion to remove lien.
Let's proceed.
Your Honor, the defendant has an objection. I'd like to go ahead and present it to you, Your Honor.
Okay.
NTX Legacy Builders LLC timely filed an objection to the verification of John Roberts attached to plaintiff's summary motion to remove defendant's lien. The motion is not verified because the affiant does not say he has personal knowledge of the facts he is verifying. Earlier today, plaintiff amended its motion without leave of the court by attaching an amended verification of Mr. Roberts. Defendant objects to the amended verification because it was not timely filed. It prejudices the defendant because the defendant would have filed a written response to the motion if it had been properly verified. Defendant requests the court to either strike the amended verification and deny the motion, or in the alternative, reset the motion so that the defendant can file a written response as to the merits of the motion. In other words, put it
I
clearly.
get it. So
Okay.
you guys want to reset? I don't think it's unreasonable. When did you correct this, Mr. Warden?
Well, Your Honor, we did submit an amended verification this morning, but it was more of a belt and suspenders type approach. The merits of the motion has not changed, and our position, Your Honor, would be at this point, the defendant would not be prejudiced because there's nothing being added. The verification is, it's just fluffed up, I guess, at this point.
I'm gonna go ahead and reset this to next Monday unless there's any objection to give Mr. Bernstein an opportunity to file a response. So what time on the 24th you guys want to have this heard?
And Your Honor, will you also approach as to when we have to file the response?
Pursuant to the local rules.
Okay, 3 days before.
Does that
The
work for you
afternoon at
guys?
2 o'clock works for me.
That's fine.
Oh, it's so 3 business days before Monday, that makes our response due on what, Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
That's pretty tight, Your Honor.
Yeah. That's why I'm chiming in. Sorry.
Well,
Can we have 2 weeks to file the response?
no, you guys need to get this done. This is,
But what if we get the response done by Monday and then the hearing like Friday or something?
have you ever heard the term pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered?
Yep. I'm well aware of that term.
I'm just giving you a hint here. Do you want to keep pushing this or what do you want to do?
That's fine. We'll get the response on file.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'm trying to give you guys a break here. So, next, we'll reset this next Monday at 2. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All righty. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Judge.
All right. Do we have both sides here on the Zion Spa case? Or are we still waiting on people?
Judge Edward Saldana for Roberto Razzo.
Okay. Wait, is it on this? Is that on the Zion Spa case or no?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Give me a second. It's not 2:15 yet. So I need to, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Tony will be back on by 2:15. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Are all parties here on the Zion Spa case or are we still waiting on some folks?
I am present, Your Honor. Robert Russell.
Okay. And Mr.
Edward.
Saldana,
Edward Saldana is still here, Your Honor.
is that everybody or are we waiting on anyone?
I have not heard from Mr. Carp as to whether he would be here or not. He did not oppose the motion.
And so do we have the attorney who's withdrawing and also the party? that
Yes, sir.
party?
Yes, sir.
Is that who's the attorney?
Edward Saldana?
And who's the party? Mr. Razzo?
Myself, sir, Robert Russell. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna, just in abundance of caution, I'm gonna wait until 2:15 just to make sure no one else is gonna show.
Okay.
Tony, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm talking to my court reporter. Tony, are you ready?
Yes, Judge,
I'm
here.
Let's go on the record on cause number DC 216080 Zion Spa LLC versus One Stop Metro Renovations. It's 2:16 now. This hearing was scheduled to start at 2:15. One of the attorneys is not here, but apparently agrees to the motion. So we will proceed. Mr. Saldana, you would wish to withdraw in this case. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor. It is a unopposed and agreed motion, and the client is here.
Okay. And is the client consent or not?
Yes, sir. I am 100% with Mr. Saldana. I am aware of his withdrawal, and I'm okay with that, sir. I agree.
Okay. Court will go ahead and grant the withdrawal then. Mr. Razzo, you'll be in charge of your own case. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea. You should probably try to find another attorney, but that's okay. We will go ahead and have you told them when the trial setting is on this?
I have, Judge. I've forwarded all the deadlines, the scheduling order, the order of continuing the original trial setting. He has all of that information.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Mr. Razzo?
No, sir. I do not at this time.
Okay. I will warn you that I've known that folks who try to represent themselves, and it can be sometimes things don't turn out as well. Frequently, they don't turn out as well when you don't have an attorney to represent you. So just be aware of that.
Your Honor, thank you for your advice. At this point, I reached the point where I've kind of hit a wall, and I'm not going through a very good patch. So I have no other option. Believe me, I'm happy with Mr. Saldana and the work he's done for me up until now. It's just a matter of not being able to afford to continue going on with something at this point. That I'm kind of forced to make the decision that I'm making.
You do know that if you get a judgment against you, that can haunt you for quite some time.
I am very aware of that, sir, but I can assure you that I am not in any wrongdoing, and I am ready to prove that I did nothing wrong.
I'm sure your attorney has talked to you about that it's that you also have to know, we're going to have to treat you like you're an attorney. And so that means you're going to have to obey all of the rules of civil procedure. You're going to have to know, how to respond to motions, how to respond to the trial. You're going to have to know to try this. It's not as simple as it is on, TV a lot of times. And so a lot of times having someone guide, like you wouldn't do, heart surgery on yourself, even though it's a lot cheaper to do it that way. Trying to represent yourself could be just as complicated, especially in a civil case. So I just urge you to, do you own your own business?
Yes, sir, I do.
Just, you've worked hard to build that business, and not having an attorney at this point could really, unfortunately, come back and bite you. But I can't force you to make any decisions like that. It's just, I've seen this turn out badly very, very frequently when people try to represent themselves. So just like people who perform heart surgery are usually not with us the next day. A lot of times people represent themselves, don't end up doing very well because they just don't know the rules.
I'm trying my best to bounce back on my feet and be able to be represented, in a few weeks if I can. I'm trying my best.
All righty. Well, your trial's on January, it looks like, what is it, January 17th. And good luck. And you guys have a great rest of your day. I just signed